For my 32nd birthday, I thought I had everything figured out. I rented a beach house big enough for the whole family, loaded the fridge with food and drinks, and sent out invitations weeks ahead of time. I was excited, almost like a kid again. And yet, when the weekend came, not a single person showed up. 3 days later, my brother went online and posted pictures with the caption, "Family weekend vibes." They were at a different beach, just 2 hours from where I'd been waiting. I didn't say a word. I just quietly cut off every bit of financial support I'd been giving. Dad's mortgage, Mom's SUV lease, and the business loan I'd co-signed and had been paying on my own. That night, my dad sent me a text. "Did something happen?" I wrote back, "Yeah, I finally got the message. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I had honestly believed I was putting together the perfect birthday celebration. I'd spent weeks planning, finding the right house on the beach, one with wide ocean views and enough room for everyone. I stocked the place with everyone's favorite food and drinks, and I made sure to send the invitations out early. I wanted this weekend to be something we'd all look back on with a smile. The rental cost me close to $2,000, but I didn't care. To me, family was worth it. I chose that house specifically because it could fit all of us. My parents, my brother and his wife, my sister and her boyfriend, plus a couple of close relatives. I even went out of my way to check schedules and send reminders so there wouldn't be any conflicts. Everyone told me they'd be there, that they wouldn't miss it for the world. On Friday afternoon, I drove down with my car packed full of groceries and decorations. The place was even more beautiful than the pictures had promised. A wraparound deck, waves crashing just beyond the porch, and plenty of space for everyone to spread out. I spent that first night getting everything ready. I set up games, laid out food, and tried to make it all perfect. I kept imagining how happy everyone would be when they arrived. Saturday morning came and went, but no one showed up. I kept checking my phone, thinking maybe they were running late. I called my brother, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried my sister, same thing. My parents' phones rang, but nobody picked up. By noon, the uneasy feeling in my gut had turned into something much heavier. I sent a message to the group chat I'd made just for the weekend, asking if they were okay and when they'd be getting there. No response. The silence felt like it was mocking me. I ended up spending the whole weekend alone in that house, surrounded by food for 10 people and decorations that suddenly looked ridiculous. Both nights I sat on the deck, watching the sun go down, trying to convince myself there had to be some kind of explanation. Maybe something urgent had come up. Maybe they had the wrong dates. But in my heart, I knew the truth. By Sunday night, I packed up and headed home. That drive back, 2 hours of quiet, was one of the loneliest trips I've ever taken. I felt invisible, like I'd been erased from the people who should have cared most. I kept replaying every recent conversation, wondering if I'd missed a sign. Then Tuesday rolled around. On my lunch break, I opened up social media and saw the photos. My brother had posted them with that caption, "Family weekend vibes." There they all were. My brother and his wife, my sister with her boyfriend, and my parents. Laughing, grilling out, playing volleyball, and soaking up the sun at a different beach. The timestamps told the whole story. They'd been there the same weekend I was sitting in an empty house. The realization hit me like a punch in the chest. This wasn't some mix-up. It wasn't bad timing. They had chosen to leave me out, plain and simple. I stared at those photos until the hurt inside me started to change. The pain was still raw, but it was quickly getting replaced with something colder. Anger. Not the loud, yelling kind, but the quiet kind that makes you start thinking differently. They'd wanted me to understand something, and I did. That very afternoon, I picked up the phone. For years, I'd been quietly carrying my family in ways they didn't even seem to notice. When Dad's construction business hit hard times, I co-signed the loan that kept it alive. When Mom decided she needed a fancy SUV for her real estate work, I covered the payments when they couldn't. And when they were about to lose their house, I stepped in and paid the mortgage just for a while. Only a while turned into years. I'd been funding their lives while they treated me like an afterthought. The bank was surprisingly helpful when I called to stop all the automatic payments. They walked me through each account. The business loan was tricky since I was a cosigner, but I could stop covering it. The mortgage and the car payments were easier since those had always come directly from me. By Thursday evening, every transfer, every arrangement was canceled. I felt strangely free. I didn't tell anyone. I just stopped. Friday passed. Nothing happened. Over the weekend, I kept checking my phone, waiting for the fallout. Monday morning, it came. Mom called in a panic because her car payment had bounced, and the dealer was threatening repossession. She asked if my bank had messed up. I told her I didn't know and suggested she check with hers. Tuesday, Dad called. The mortgage company had left him a voicemail about a missed payment, and he thought I was still handling it. I acted surprised, told him I'd look into it, all while knowing I wouldn't lift a finger. By Wednesday evening, my phone lit up with my brother's name. He said he was calling for Dad, who was apparently too proud to ask me himself. The business loan payment had bounced, and things were about to get ugly if it didn't get handled fast. My brother asked if I could cover it, just this once, while they sorted out whatever was going wrong with their finances. I told him I was strapped myself and couldn't help right now. The panic in his voice told me everything I needed to know. The next few days turned into a steady stream of desperate calls and messages. My sister rang me up, crying, saying she didn't understand how everything could be falling apart all at once. Mom left me long voicemails about how her car was critical for showing houses, how her whole career depended on keeping it. And Dad, after finally swallowing that pride, called and asked if we could meet for lunch to discuss some temporary help. I stayed polite, but I gave them nothing. Thursday evening, 1 week to the day since I'd shut off the payments, Dad finally texted me, "Did something happen?" I stared at that message for a long while. Part of me wanted to let loose, to dump every ounce of hurt and betrayal into a reply. I wanted to explain how their little beach trip had gutted me. But I knew how that would go. They'd find a way to downplay it, twist it, maybe even turn themselves into the victims. So I kept it short. Yeah, I finally took the hint. Seconds later, my phone started ringing. I hit decline and switched it to silent. For the next hour, my screen lit up nonstop with frantic texts. Dad demanded answers. Mom insisted it was all a misunderstanding. My brother and sister both sent long messages trying to figure out what had gone wrong. I ignored every single one. Update 1. That weekend, things came to a head. My brother showed up at my apartment early Saturday morning without warning. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Eyes sunken, shoulders heavy. He came right in and started rambling about how the family was falling apart and how I owed him an explanation. I poured him a coffee and sat back while he laid everything out. Without me propping them up, my parents were weeks away from losing the house. Mom's SUV was about to get repossessed, which would all but kill her real estate career. And Dad's business loan, without my payments, was on track to default, which would wreck his credit and probably shove him into bankruptcy. He begged me to tell him what he could do to fix it. I pulled out my phone, brought up the photos from their family weekend, and slid it across the coffee table. I watched his expression shift in real time. The color drained from his face as it clicked. He finally saw the straight line between those pictures and the mess they were drowning in now. Then came the excuses. He said the beach trip had been a last-minute surprise from his wife, that he'd tried to reach me but couldn't get through. Each excuse was weaker than the one before, and he knew it. So I asked him the real questions. Why didn't anyone think to invite me? Why didn't anyone wonder where I was or bother to check on me that weekend? Why did it take a financial meltdown for them to notice I even existed? He had no answers. Later that afternoon, my parents showed up together. Mom cried through her apology, saying she'd somehow gotten the dates mixed up and thought my birthday was later. Dad, on the other hand, skipped the tears and got straight to business. He asked what it would take to make things right again. He even said he'd pay me back every cent I'd ever given. We both knew that was impossible. I told them the truth. I wasn't angry about the money. I never gave it expecting repayment. What cut deep was being treated like I didn't matter, like I was disposable. They had excluded me from my own family while I was the one quietly holding their lives together. Mom tried to tell me I was blowing things out of proportion. She said families sometimes miscommunicate, and with a little more planning, this kind of thing wouldn't happen again. She even suggested we set up a shared calendar to keep track of everyone's schedules. That's when I realized she still didn't get it. She didn't understand what she'd actually done wrong. Update 2. On Sunday, my sister showed up at my door with her boyfriend in tow. She was crying before I even opened it, falling all over herself with apologies for missing my birthday. She said she'd been buried under work stress and had forgotten all about the beach house until she saw my brother's photos. Her boyfriend barely spoke. She did all the talking, about how guilty she felt, how she'd been meaning to call me all week but didn't know how to start. She promised she'd never let something like that happen again and begged me to step in and help the family through their rough patch. I looked her right in the eye and asked if she'd enjoyed the volleyball game at the other beach, if the sunset dinner had been as perfect as it looked in those pictures. She couldn't meet my eyes. Finally, she admitted the truth. That trip had been planned for weeks. Everyone knew about both weekends. They had chosen the one that didn't include me. When I pressed her for why, she broke down completely. Through her sobs, she admitted that it was my brother's wife who had pushed for the other trip. She thought my rental was too nice, too expensive, that I was just showing off and trying to make everyone feel small about their own money problems. And she'd convinced the whole family to go along with it. The irony was almost laughable. They thought I was flaunting my money while I was secretly paying their bills, keeping their lives from collapsing. I told my sister the truth, that I had spent 3 years carrying this family, quietly covering their mortgage, car, and loans, never asking for a thing in return except respect. Instead, I'd been paid back with exclusion and casual cruelty. She begged for another chance. She promised things would change, that they'd include me, appreciate me, treat me better. But I told her some things can't be fixed. Once trust is shattered this badly, words and promises don't rebuild it. That Monday, the news came. Dad's business was officially in default. The bank froze his accounts and started seizing his equipment. Mom's car had already been repossessed. And the house? They had 10 days to catch up on the mortgage before foreclosure proceedings started. That night, my brother called. His voice was empty, defeated. He asked if there was any amount of money, any act of remorse that could make me change my mind. He offered to throw me a belated birthday party, even pay for a family vacation where I could plan it however I wanted. I told him he still didn't understand. This was never about money or parties. It was about being valued as a person, not just a wallet. Update 3. By Tuesday, things had reached their breaking point. My entire family showed up at my workplace during my lunch break. They cornered me in the parking lot with a flood of desperate offers. Dad said he'd sign over half his business if I'd save it. Mom promised she'd quit real estate and take a normal job just to pay me back. My brother and sister both offered to take out loans to cover some of the bills. None of it mattered. They still couldn't see that what I wanted wasn't their money, or their businesses, or their promises. All I had ever wanted was simple human decency, and that's something they couldn't repay. I told them I was done. Done being the safety net. Done being taken for granted. Done being treated like an outsider in the same family I'd been sacrificing for. Their actions had taught me my worth, and for once, I was choosing to live by it. That's when my brother's wife finally opened her mouth. She accused me of being petty, of destroying innocent lives over what she called a misunderstanding about party dates. She said my reaction was exactly why they hadn't wanted me at their beach trip in the first place. Her words hit the air like a hammer. Even my family looked stunned at how blunt she was. I thanked her for saying it out loud. At least now the truth was on the table. I told them all that they had made their feelings clear long ago, and I was simply giving them back the same treatment. They'd shown me how little I mattered, and I was just responding in kind. Then I walked back into my office and blocked every one of their numbers. 3 weeks later, word reached me through a mutual friend. My parents had lost the house and were living with my brother. Dad's business was gone, liquidated to cover his debts. Mom was working part-time at a department store. I didn't feel relief, or guilt, or pride. I didn't feel anything at all. That friend asked if I thought I'd ever reconcile with them, if this was just some kind of punishment I'd eventually let go of. That's when it hit me. I didn't miss them. Not one bit. What I'd been mourning wasn't the loss of a family, it was the loss of the idea of one. Because in reality, the family I thought I had never really existed. I'd been giving everything, my love, my time, my money, to people who saw me only as a resource, never as a son or a brother. For the first time in years, I wasn't financially drowning. For the first time in years, I wasn't emotionally exhausted from trying to earn their approval. I was free to invest in people who actually wanted me around. That night, I rented another beach house for the upcoming weekend. But this time, I sent the invites to friends, the kind who had stood by me, remembered my birthday, and made me feel like I mattered. And when the weekend came, those photos told a completely different story. No fake smiles, no hidden messages, just genuine laughter and real happiness. In the comments, someone asked if my family would be joining me next time.